Moar by Joan Cornella dropped around 24 hours ago. The volume has been absolutely insane on the secondary market and the floor price is sitting well above the mint price if you could get in on it. Let's jump in and check out the post-drop pre-reveal stats. Now the first thing I want to do is jump in and check out OpenSea. Ignore this floor price. This isn't the actual floor price. If you actually head down to the activity section, you can see here sort of 4 minutes ago 1.99, then we've got sort of 1.99 to 2, so we can see that the actual floor price is around that 2 ETH mark. Now real quick, while I'm actually doing a bit of an edit, I wanted to kind of touch on the fact that there is a diamond hold hand period, which will kind of lock up essentially 1600 of the supply. So please keep that in mind throughout the video, that this will affect the floor price. Now what we're going to do is we're going to head over onto Nansen, which is one of my favorite tools to use, to then have a look at where things are. Before we jump into the main stats, the 24-hour market overview, what you can see here is Moar by Joan Cornella. It is crazy. We've got sort of 5,600 worth of volume, and the next closest thing was almost sort of less than half of that at 1,800. So over this past 24-hour period, this project is absolutely killing it. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to jump over into the actual project itself. So it was deployed 32 hours ago, but the mint happened around 24 hours ago. So we've got 5,555 in circulation. So that is a low supply, which is good. And this is why I think we're kind of getting a bit of traction as well on top of the actual artist's notoriety. When we have a look at the sort of average price and the volume, what we can see here is that the blue line is the average price. We can see that over time, it kind of ran up really fast from the 0.5 mint. And then we actually kind of capped out almost at that sort of 2.5, then back down to the 1.8, and it's kind of sitting around the 2. Now, when we actually head down to have a look at the individual transactions, we get a more in-depth look at this. Now, when we have a look at the chart here, what we can actually see is that we've got all of the kind of mints. It ran up to around that 2.5, then it came down and it's hit a bit of a support of 1.8, floated up around, almost dipped back down to that 1.8, but it's kind of sitting at around that 2 mark. So currently what the market is doing is the market is essentially pricing this project pre-reveal at around that 2 ETH mark. Now what we're going to do now is we're going to jump over and have a look at a breakdown of some of the holders, the top balances, things like that. Now when we have a look at the top balances, we've got the top holder holding 25, then we've got 21, 21, and 16. Now what we're actually going to do is we're going to jump in and have a look at the very first person, so the top holder, and see what they're holding. They are basically only holding 25 and then sort of 6 arcade land. Now I don't believe that this is a marketing wallet or a dev wallet, because when we actually have a look and we bump through, they've got Moar by Joan Cornella, but they've done a whole bunch of trading beforehand. So we've got some heaps, things like that. So this, I believe this is a kind of almost like someone's vault that they've got, and they're kind of running this up. Now when we have a look at the next highest holder, what we can see here is they've got 21, then they've got some of the Venus Sports, we've then got Gutter Juice, and then a few other kind of rounded out. And then the third highest holder, what we can see here, they've got 2 Azukis, so they're riding some with the Azukis, and then a few others. So that is a little bit of who's actually holding this project, and those big kind of holders. And with that 2 ETH floor currently, they're sitting between 40 and 50 ETH worth of kind of value right there. Now next up, we're going to have a look at the holders of the project. So what we can see here is that we've got the unique addresses. Now it's sitting at around almost 3,600, which is around that sort of 65% mark, which is very high, very good. I like that. When we have a look at the percentage holding one NFT, we've also got around that 60% mark, which is good. And I think that is a good distribution. And it means that if people want to sort of exit the project, if they sell, they're exiting the project. Now, what I want to get down to now is the profit leaderboard. Now, the profit leaderboard is good because we can see how much more runway there could be in this project before we get to the reveal. Now with the profit leaderboard, the top profit taker has taken 8. Now over on the right, we can see NFTs bought and NFTs sold. Now with the top profit taker having sort of almost 9 ETH profit, they've actually bought 7 and sold 6. So they're still in the project, but what you'll notice here is that to round out the top 10, all of those people are completely out. These are out, these are out. Essentially, all the top profit takers have completely exited the project. They're not kind of sort of half in, half out, kind of seeing where it rides. So those people are essentially those quick flippers that are in and out, which makes me feel a little bit more bullish when it comes down to the project in terms of the holders that are here, because the people that have kind of exited and jumped out are essentially kind of in and out completely. And what this means is it means that they've kind of offloaded to other holders because of the fact that we've got this big distribution. Now, what we're going to be jumping into now is having a look at where the entry points for some of these top buying addresses are and some of the smart money, so we can see where some good entry points are and where their entry points were. So when we have a look at the top 5 buying addresses, what we can see here is we've got it kind of, we can see this almost bounce up. So what this points out is that if you could get in at around under that 1.4 mark, you're actually getting in at a discount compared to where the top 5 buying addresses are. So the top 5 buying addresses, essentially people that really believe in the project and like the whales essentially in the project. Now, what you can kind of get here is that they've bought a lot between the 1.6 to 1.8 mark, which makes me think that if the price before reveal was to get underneath the 1.8, that's where they're going to scoop it up, because that's where they kind of see that value range and that's where they're accumulating. I don't believe it getting under 1.6 before reveal, just because of where the top 5 buying addresses are. And they may be deploying more capital there, and other people would see that that's where the top 5 buying addresses have deployed some capital, so that may be a good entry point. What this means, and without giving out financial advice, is the fact that I feel like anything under a 1.6 looks like a decent entry. This is before reveal, not after. We'll get to that shortly, but anything under a 1.4 is a great steal. So if you did have a kind of sniping tool that can kind of get listings, I would set it at around that 1.4 to 1.5 mark, because then you know you're going to at least get an easy 0.3 flip currently where the market is sitting. But that is contingent on the project holding where it is with no bad news. Now, when we have a look at where the smart money was buying in, it is a different story. We can see here they're buying more around this kind of 1.5 mark, because we can see this big cluster right here. So with the smart money, they always buy more conservatively, and this is where they're kind of sitting when it comes down to the project. So they're looking at the sort of the value of the project pre-reveal at around that 1.5 mark. Now look, I want to jump in and have a look at where the floor price is currently and where it could possibly go after reveal. Now, what I think is important is it's important to know that Moar is a part of the FWEN Club, essentially collective. What they do is they're taking these artists and helping them develop and build these out. Now, the reason that I say this is important is if we have a look at this project, which has also been dropped by FWEN Club, is People in the Place They Love. This has a 1,000 item kind of supply with a floor price of 4.6. Now, I know that this is a completely different artist, but what you need to kind of consider here is the fact that it's part of the same collective, and people may not be collecting from the artist, but they may be kind of going from the support crew around it, and this will actually play an influence in people's decision making. So taking the fact that we've got essentially a floor price of 4.6, and this is with 1,000 items, and you kind of essentially incorporate in the supply of the 5,500, you end up with a kind of floor price at around that 0.9 mark. So where I currently see this project sitting is we're currently sitting around a 2 ETH mark. I think after reveal, what we will get is we will get a dip down under that 1 ETH mark to around that 0.8 mark. I think it will kind of essentially bleed out for a little bit over time, because people will get some rare items and people will kind of flip them, and then hype will sort of die off and move on. But what this means is it means that sort of obviously rare ones are going to go for a lot more, but it does mean that there will be a lot of action on the day. I'm not sure. I feel like this should be sitting around that sort of 0.8 to 0.12 mark, with the average sitting around that 1 ETH mark. That is where the kind of charts are kind of pointing out, because the fact that we're sitting at around that 2 ETH mark, knock 50% off it, that seems like a decent retracement. Everything drops 50% and then you can kind of go from there. And look, to back up what I'm saying, People in the Place They Love deployed almost 2 months ago. We can see here that the average price before the reveal was sitting at around that 6 ETH mark, and it's dropped off to around that 4 mark. So you can see it kind of wiped off about, I'd say, a third. So that's why I think we will kind of get around that 50% drop mark, because there is a high supply. So that's why I've kind of like essentially sandbagged. So this isn't completely arbitrary. This is the fact that I'm kind of basing it off an existing project that's within that collective where that's kind of done, and then also kind of going off past experiences. So that is my breakdown of Moar by Joan Cornella, kind of the post-drop pre-reveal stats, where it's currently sitting and where it may go after reveal. If you found value in this video, please consider hitting up that subscribe button while you're down there. Also hit up the like button. As always, it's been a pleasure having you with me. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Now look, real quick before I wrap this video up, something I want to touch on. You should really check out FWEN CLUB, because what we are starting to see is the fact that they are dropping projects that are performing decently well above the mint price. So we can see here, People in the Place They Love, minted out, run up to an average of 6, back down to a 4, absolutely killer. Moar by Joan Cornella, absolutely killed it, has run up, it's sitting very high, very solid, and it may do a minor pullback, but it should still be above the mint. So I think the other takeaway from this, apart from the stats, is also projecting forward, getting into this ecosystem, being early on what they do next, which will then help you out in the future about being on these hot projects, because projects like this that do perform well, they're going to become bigger and better in the future.